Ladies and gentlemen, in every corner of our lives there exists a battle. It's not a war waged with weapons or fists, but one fought in the unseen realm, spiritual, emotional, and mental. Today, I need to speak about something critical, something often overlooked, the subtle yet powerful signs that dark forces may be influencing the people we love. When someone you can't believe about begins to exhibit drastic behavior shifts without a clear reason, it's a moment that should stop you in your tracks. These aren't ordinary mood swings or reactions to temporary stress. They are profound, often sudden changes that seem completely out of character. This phenomenon is one of the most striking signs that something spiritual, something beyond the natural may be at work. Imagine someone who was once full of life, someone whose demeanor radiated kindness and compassion. Suddenly they become short-tempered, critical, or even cruel. The warmth in their voice turns cold, and their actions, once guided by love, now seem motivated by anger or frustration. It's as though a shadow has fallen over their personality, dimming the light they once carried. You may feel confused, even alarmed, asking yourself what happened, why are they acting this way? The truth is, these shifts are often more than just a bad day or a rough season. They can be a sign of spiritual warfare, a battle waged not in the physical realm, but in the unseen. Demonic influence doesn't always appear with dramatic possession or frightening manifestations. In fact, more often it starts subtly planting seeds of negativity, bitterness, and conflict in a person's heart. Dark forces thrive on disruption. Their ultimate goal is to steal peace, joy, and connection, replacing them with chaos, despair, and division. That when a loved one starts behaving in ways that drive a wedge between themselves and the people around them, it's essential to recognize that this might not be entirely their doing. That something external could be amplifying their frustrations, feeding their fears, and steering them away from their true self. This influence often targets the mind, a battlefield where thoughts are planted and nurtured. Consider how a small seed of doubt can grow into a forest of insecurity if it's watered by negativity. As a harsh word from a colleague, a perceived slight from a friend, or even a simple mistake can become magnified under the weight of demonic influence. Suddenly, what should have been a minor inconvenience or misunderstanding feels monumental, triggering a response that's wildly out of proportion. For instance, a once patient parent may start snapping at their children for small mistakes, or a devoted spouse might become inexplicably distant and critical. These changes don't just harm relationships, they isolate the individual, making them feel misunderstood and alone. Isolation, of course, is one of the primary tools of the enemy. The more isolated someone feels, the easier they are to manipulate. But why do demons target behavior in such a direct way? The answer lies in the ripple effect of relationships. When someone's behavior shifts dramatically, it doesn't just affect them, it impacts everyone around them. Families become fractured, friendships dissolve, and workplaces turn toxic. This chain reaction of broken relationships and lost trust creates an environment where darkness can thrive, feeding on the pain and disconnection it has sown. It's crucial to approach these situations with sensitivity and discernment. When we see someone behaving in ways that hurt or confuse us, the natural response is often to react emotionally. We may feel angry, hurt, or even betrayed. But it's important to remember that the person you love is not the enemy. They are a victim of forces working to exploit their vulnerabilities. This doesn't mean excusing harmful behavior or allowing yourself to be mistreated. Boundaries are essential for your well-being. However, it does mean approaching the situation with compassion and a willingness to look deeper. Ask yourself what is fueling this change. What pain or insecurity might be giving this darkness a foothold? Dave's one of the most powerful tools you have in this fight is prayer. When faced with drastic behavioral shifts in a loved one, take your concerns to God. Pray not just for the individual, but for the spiritual forces influencing them to be broken. Prayer creates a protective barrier, a hedge of light that darkness cannot penetrate. But prayer must be accompanied by action. Be intentional how you interact with your loved one. Speak words of encouragement and affirmation, even when it feels difficult. Your words have the power to remind them of who they truly are beneath the surface. Let them know you see the good in them, even if they've forgotten it themselves. Sometimes these behavioral changes can also be a cry for help. They may be wrestling with inner turmoil they don't know how to articulate. In these moments, simply being present can make all the difference. us and without judgment, offering a safe space for them to share their struggles. Even if they can't pinpoint the cause of their feelings, knowing someone cares can be a powerful antidote to the isolation and despair they're experiencing. It's also important to recognize the limits of your influence. You cannot fight this battle for them, nor can you fix them through sheer willpower. What you can do is stand beside them, offering support, encouragement, and unconditional love. Ultimately, the choice to seek healing and deliverance must come from within them. In some cases, these drastic shifts may require professional intervention, whether from a counselor, a spiritual leader, or both. There is no shame in seeking help. In fact, it's a sign of strength and wisdom. Encourage your loved one to pursue these resources, framing them not as a sign of weakness, but as a step toward reclaiming their peace and purpose. Above all, don't lose hope. Behavioral shifts influenced by demonic forces are not permanent. With vigilance, prayer, and love, the light can and will overcome the darkness. Your loved one is not lost, they are simply under attack. By standing firm in faith and refusing to give up on them, you become a beacon of hope in their journey back to themselves. However, remember, the battle is not yours alone. Call upon the strength of God, who is always greater than the forces that oppose you. And as you fight for your loved one, remember to care for yourself as well. The journey may be long, but victory is assured for those who walk in faith. When someone you deeply care about begins to exhibit drastic behavioral shifts without a clear reason, it can leave you feeling confused and alarmed. Thus, these shifts are not the typical mood swings or fleeting moments of frustration that we all experience. They go deeper, affecting the very essence of a person's character and causing them to behave in ways that seem almost unrecognizable. Imagine a loved one once known for their kindness suddenly becoming short-tempered, critical, or even distant. Their warm and loving nature might seem replaced by irritability, aggression, or frustration, often over trivial matters that wouldn't have bothered them before. A sudden transformation can be disorienting, leaving you questioning not only the behavior of the person, but also the reasons behind it. It's important to recognize that these drastic changes are not always the result of external stresses or difficult life situations. In many cases, they can be a sign that something spiritual is at play, something beyond the surface level of what can be seen or explained. Thus, the spiritual battle we face daily is often invisible. Demons and dark forces do not announce their presence in ways that are easily detectable. Instead, they work subtly, influencing thoughts, emotions, and ultimately behaviors in a manner that is hard to pinpoint until the damage is already done. It's not always about the dramatic or overt manifestations we see in horror stories or movies where people are visibly possessed or haunted. The more insidious and effective method is one where they slowly erode a person's peace, sowing seeds of doubt, bitterness, anger, and confusion. The ultimate goal is to weaken the individual, break their relationships, and isolate them from their sense of self and from the support system that could help them break free. Thus, when a loved one starts exhibiting drastic behavioral changes, it's crucial to recognize that they may not be fully in control of what is happening. A sudden shift in behavior is often an indication that something has taken root deep within them, something that is steering their actions and emotions that don't reflect their true nature. These changes can manifest in many forms. Perhaps someone who was once calm and composed begins to lash out in fits of rage even over the smallest of issues. Or maybe a person who was always dependable and thoughtful starts neglecting their responsibilities or becomes distant and aloof, pushing loved ones away without explanation. This behavior is often defy logic. There may be no clear event or trigger that accounts for the shift, and when this happens, it can be easy to blame the person for their actions without recognizing that there may be a deeper spiritual cause. Now, one of the most unsettling aspects of this type of influence is how it works gradually. Demons do not typically announce their presence with dramatic effects. They often move in quietly, planting seeds of negativity and slowly nurturing them into something far more destructive. This process starts with small, seemingly insignificant thoughts that grow over time. A minor frustration may turn into a deep sense of bitterness. A slight misunderstanding might evolve into a full-blown resentment. As these thoughts and emotions fester, they begin to take over the person's mind, distorting their perspective and altering their behavior. That they begin to see the world and even their loved ones through a lens of negativity. The anger that once seemed to come from nowhere might begin to feel like an all-consuming force. These subtle shifts in behavior are not always easy to identify. Sometimes the person themselves may not even recognize the changes in their own behavior. The darkness works in such a way that it masks itself as normalcy. They may even begin to justify their actions, telling themselves that they are simply being honest or that their frustration is justified. This is the deceptive nature of spiritual oppression. The person who is influenced may feel trapped in their own emotions, struggling to understand why they are behaving in ways that are harmful to themselves and others. They may feel as though they are not fully in control of their actions, but at the same time, they might not be able to recognize the spiritual force that is at work. It is essential, however, to remember that when these drastic behavioral shifts occur, the individual is not the enemy. The person you love is not the source of the problem. Instead, it is the dark forces that are working behind the scenes to pull them away from who they truly are. In these moments, it's easy to react with frustration, particularly when the behavior is hurtful or confusing. But it is important to approach the situation with compassion and understanding. Rather than focusing on the anger or the negative behaviors and pedestrians, try to look beyond them to the root cause. Instead of condemning the person, focus on addressing the influence that is causing them to act in ways that are out of character. Recognizing these shifts is the first step in fighting back against the spiritual forces that seek to disrupt the lives of those we love. The next step is to offer support, understanding, and prayer. Prayer is a powerful tool that can bring healing and restoration to someone who is under spiritual attack. It is through prayer that you can intercede on their behalf, asking for divine protection and for the darkness that is influencing their mind and behavior to be broken. Prayer helps to shift the atmosphere, creating space for light and truth to pierce through the darkness. It also strengthens the person who is being affected, providing them with the clarity and peace they need to regain control of their thoughts and actions. That's when you recognize that a loved one's drastic behavioral changes may be influenced by demonic forces. It's crucial not to face this challenge alone. Surround yourself with other trusted individuals who can help support you in this battle. Come together, you can pray, encourage one another, and offer the strength needed to confront the darkness. It's important to stay vigilant and committed to offering love and compassion, even when it feels as though the person is pushing you away. The person you care about is not intentionally harming you. They are being influenced by something beyond their control. Through prayer, support, and a commitment to unconditional love, it is possible to help someone break free from the grip of negative spiritual influences. These behavioral shifts do not have to be permanent. Then with time, faith, and support, the darkness can be pushed back and the person can return to their true self, the person they were always meant to be. When someone you love begins to lose their passion and sense of purpose, it's a deeply troubling experience. This isn't about fleeting moments of doubt or the temporary exhaustion that comes from hard work or setbacks. It's a more profound and unsettling shift, a pervasive feeling of aimlessness that seems to take hold of their souls. They once had dreams that lit up their eyes and goals that drove their actions, but now those ambitions seem to have faded into the background. What's left is a person who appears to be going through the motions of life without any real enthusiasm or direction. That this loss of passion and purpose can be one of the clearest signs that dark forces are at work. It's not just a natural response to life challenges, it's an attack on their very identity and destiny. Darkness operates with a clear agenda to steal, kill, and destroy, and one of its most effective strategies is to target the dreams and desires that God has placed within a person. Passion and purpose are not just personal motivations, they are divine assignments. Today, each person is born with unique gifts, talents, and a calling that is meant to contribute to the world in a meaningful way. When someone is living in alignment with their purpose, they radiate a sense of fulfillment and joy that is almost tangible. This light becomes a threat to darkness, which seeks to snuff it out at every opportunity. The loss of passion often begins subtly. It might start with small doubts creeping into the person's mind. What if I'm not good enough? What if I fail? These thoughts, those seemingly harmless at first, begin to take root and grow. Over time, they become a relentless internal narrative that undermines their confidence and convinces them that their dreams are unattainable. This mental and emotional erosion is a spiritual attack designed to separate them from their calling. And once they begin to believe these lies, their enthusiasm for life starts to wane. They may stop pursuing their goals, dismissing them as foolish or impractical. What was once a burning desire to create, build, or achieve becomes a distant memory. As the loss of passion takes hold, it often spreads to other areas of life. A person who loses sight of their purpose may begin to disengage from relationships, hobbies, and even their faith. They might appear uninterested or even apathetic. The things that used to bring them joy no longer seem to matter. This detachment is not just a symptom of their inner turmoil, it is part of the enemy's plan to isolate them. That when a person feels disconnected from their purpose, they often withdraw from the people and activities that can help reignite their passion. Isolation creates a fertile ground for further spiritual attacks as the person becomes more vulnerable to negative thoughts and influences. The loss of purpose is not just a personal struggle, it has a ripple effect on the people around them. When someone you love loses their sense of direction, it can be heartbreaking to witness. You may feel helpless, unsure of how to support them or bring them back to the person they once were. Their lack of motivation can strain relationships as their loved ones struggle to understand the sudden change in behavior. This strain is another tactic of darkness which thrives on division and discord. The more fractured the relationships around a person, the more isolated they become, and the harder it is for them to find their way back to their true self. That's one of the most painful aspects of witnessing someone lose their passion is the knowledge that gifts and talents are going unused. Each person is uniquely designed with abilities that are meant to be shared with the richer world. When someone stops using these gifts, it's as if a part of them begins to wither. They may start to feel unworthy or incapable, and this sense of inadequacy can further deepen their despair. The enemy knows that when a person is walking in their purpose, they are a force for good in the world. By convincing them that their contributions don't matter, darkness effectively silences their potential impact. It's important to recognize that the loss of passion and purpose are not always immediately visible. Many people mask their struggles with a facade of normalcy, going through their daily routines without revealing the depth of their inner turmoil. They might smile and nod in conversations while feeling completely lost inside. This disconnect between their outward behavior and their inner reality can make it challenging to identify the signs of spiritual attack. However, if you look closely, you may notice subtle changes in their demeanor, such as a lack of enthusiasm, a decline in energy, or a tendency to avoid discussions about their goals and dreams. If you suspect that someone you love is struggling with a loss of passion and purpose, it's crucial to approach the situation with compassion and understanding. Avoid dismissing their feelings or offering platitudes like "you'll get over it" or "it's just a phase." And instead, take the time to listen to them without judgment, creating a safe space for them to express their thoughts and emotions. Often, just having someone who is willing to listen can be a powerful first step in breaking through the darkness. Let them know that you believe in them and their abilities, even if they've lost faith in themselves. Prayer is an essential tool in addressing the loss of passion and purpose. When someone is under spiritual attack, they need divine intervention to restore their sense of direction. Pray for clarity, strength, and renewed hope for your loved one. Ask God to reveal the lies that have taken root in their mind and replace them with His truth. Prayer is not just a passive act, it is a powerful weapon that can break chains and bring about transformation. But encouraging someone to reconnect with their passions can also be a practical way to help them rediscover their purpose. Gently remind them of the things they used to love doing, whether it's writing, painting, teaching, or helping others. Sometimes reigniting a small spark of interest can lead to a rekindling of passion. Be patient with them, as this process may take time. The journey back to purpose is not always a straight path, but every step in the right direction is a victory. It's also important to recognize that professional help may be necessary in some cases. If someone's loss of passion and purpose is accompanied by feelings of deep despair or hopelessness, they may benefit from speaking with a counselor, therapist, or spiritual leader. These individuals can provide guidance and support, helping them navigate their way through the darkness. The loss of passion and purpose is one of the enemy's most insidious strategies because it strikes at the core of who a person is. It's not just about robbing them of their joy, it's about derailing their destiny. But no matter how deep the darkness may seem, there is always hope. Through prayer, love, and unwavering support, it is possible to help someone reclaim their passion and rediscover the purpose for which they were created. Powerful, when people you care about begin withdrawing from faith and spiritual practices, it can be one of the most alarming signs that something deeper is going on. Faith is often the foundation that holds individuals together during life's most challenging times. It serves as a source of hope, strength, and direction, grounding people in a sense of purpose and connection to something greater than themselves. Then, when that foundation begins to crack, it's not always a gradual drift caused by busyness or distraction. In many cases, it can be a targeted spiritual attack designed to sever their lifeline to the divine. A growing disinterest in prayer, scripture, worship, or fellowship is not merely a personal choice. Choice it can signify that darker forces are at work, pulling them away from the light. The withdrawal from faith usually starts subtly, almost imperceptibly. A person might skip a day of prayer here and there, finding it difficult to focus or simply feeling too tired. Perhaps they used to find solace and inspiration in reading scripture or attending worship services, but now they say they don't feel connected anymore. These small shifts may seem insignificant at first, but over time they compound, creating a widening gap between the individual and their spiritual practices. This distance makes them more vulnerable to feelings of doubt, fear, and confusion, which are often the enemy's tools for deepening their spiritual isolation. Faith withdrawal often coincides with an increase in feelings of restlessness or dissatisfaction. A person who is usually content with their spiritual journey might suddenly begin questioning everything: God's presence, His goodness, or even the purpose of their faith. These questions, while natural in moments of spiritual growth or introspection, can take on a much darker tone during spiritual attacks. Instead of seeking answers with a humble and open heart and ease, the person may become angry, cynical, or apathetic. Their questions stop being a path after greater understanding and instead become barriers that push them further from God. This shift in mindset can be incredibly disheartening for those around them who have witnessed their once strong faith. That's one of the most concerning aspects of faith withdrawal, is the loss of spiritual discernment. When someone distances themselves from their spiritual practices, they lose the sensitivity needed to recognize the workings of darkness in their life. The enemy thrives in this confusion, planting seeds of mistrust, bitterness, and despair that are harder to detect without the clarity and wisdom that come from staying connected to God. A person who is spiritually isolated may begin to make decisions that are out of character, allowing harmful influences to take root. This can lead to a cascade of negative consequences as they lose their spiritual anchor and begin drifting into patterns of behavior that further separate them from their faith. This withdrawal also tends to manifest in their relationships with others, particularly those who share their spiritual beliefs. They might start avoiding conversations about faith or dismiss the concerns of loved ones. Notice their disconnection. Over time, they may even withdraw from the community of believers entirely, isolating themselves from the very people who could offer support and encouragement. This isolation is a key strategy of darkness, which seeks to separate individuals from the fellowship that strengthens their faith. Dealt without the accountability and love of a spiritual community, they become more susceptible to doubt and despair. Another hallmark of faith withdrawal is the development of a hardened heart. This doesn't happen overnight. It is a gradual process that begins with small compromises or unresolved frustrations. Perhaps they prayed fervently for something and didn't receive the answer they were hoping for. And instead of seeking understanding or trusting in God's greater plan, they allow disappointment to fester into resentment. Over time, this resentment becomes a barrier between them and God, making it increasingly difficult for them to feel His presence or hear His voice. This hardened heart not only impacts their relationship with God, but also spills over into their interactions with others, leading to strained relationships and a sense of isolation. In many cases, the withdrawal from faith is accompanied by a shift in priorities. Activities or interests that once seemed secondary to their spiritual growth suddenly take center stage. They may become preoccupied with work, hobbies, or social pursuits, filling their time with distractions that leave little room for faith. While there's nothing inherently wrong with these activities, they become problematic when they replace spiritual practices rather than complement them. The enemy often uses these distractions as a way to draw people away from their faith, convincing them that they are too busy or that their time is better spent elsewhere. The withdrawal from faith can also lead to a deeper sense of hopelessness or despair. Without the grounding influence of their spiritual practices, individuals may struggle to find meaning or direction in their lives. This can manifest as a sense of emptiness or a feeling that something is missing, even if they can't quite put their finger on what it is. They might seek to fill this void with temporary fixes, material possessions, fleeting pleasures, or unhealthy relationships, but these substitutes only deepen their sense of dissatisfaction. The more they try to find fulfillment outside of their faith, the more lost they become. And if someone you love is withdrawing from their faith, it's essential to respond with compassion and understanding. This is not the time to lecture them or try to force them back into their spiritual practices. Instead, focus on being a source of encouragement and support. Listen to their concerns without judgment and let them know that you are there for them no matter what. Sometimes just knowing that someone cares can make a significant difference in their journey back to faith. Prayer is an indispensable tool in this situation. Even if the person is unwilling or unable to pray for themselves, you can intercede on their behalf, pray for their heart to be softened, their mind to be opened, and for the barriers that are separating them from God to be broken down. Prayer has the power to shift the spiritual atmosphere, creating opportunities for healing and restoration. It also helps to guard your own heart against discouragement, reminding you that God is still at work, even when the situation seems dire. It's also important to gently remind a person of the love and grace that are always available to them. Often, individuals who withdraw from their faith feel unworthy or ashamed, believing that they have strayed too far to return. Have reassured them that God's love is unconditional and no mistake or misstep can separate them from His grace. Encourage them to take small steps back toward their faith, whether it's through prayer, reading scripture, or simply reflecting on the things they are grateful for. The battle for someone's faith is not just theirs to fight, it is a collective effort that requires the support and prayers of those who love them. While the process of restoring faith may be slow and challenging, it is not impossible. Set with patience, persistence, and unwavering love, it is possible to help someone reconnect with their spiritual practices and rediscover the sense of hope and purpose that faith brings. As when negative and harmful influences start to infiltrate the life of someone you care about, it can be both unsettling and heartbreaking. These influences often manifest subtly at first, making it difficult to pinpoint exactly when things began to change. Over time, however, their presence becomes unmistakable. You might notice shifts in their attitudes, priorities, or behaviors that don't align with the person you know and love. That these changes are not coincidental, they often signify an intentional effort by dark forces to steer them away from their true path and into environments or mindsets that breed chaos, confusion, and destruction. Negative influences can take many forms: people, media, environments, or even internal thought patterns. One of the most pervasive sources of harmful influence is toxic relationships. When someone becomes entangled with individuals who lead them astray, it can drastically alter their mindset and decisions. These toxic relationships often begin innocently, with the individual believing they found a friend, mentor, or romantic partner who supports them. But over time, it becomes clear that these connections are draining rather than uplifting. Toxic individuals often manipulate, control, or exploit, sowing seeds of doubt, anger, and self-destruction. They might encourage behaviors that are harmful, whether that's indulging in unhealthy habits, ignoring responsibilities, or rejecting positive influences in their life. The impact of toxic relationships is profound. When someone allows these individuals into their life, they often start to mirror their behaviors, adopting negative attitudes and perspectives that they previously wouldn't have entertained. For instance, a person who was once kind, optimistic, and grounded might begin to display signs of bitterness, cynicism, or even hostility. This change in disposition is a direct result of the dark energy that toxic relationships bring. The enemy uses these relationships as a tool to pull people away from their purpose and into a cycle of pain and dysfunction. Another insidious form of negative influence is the media and content people consume. In today's world, the barrage of information and entertainment can be overwhelming, Not all content is harmful, but much of it can subtly undermine a person's values, beliefs, and sense of self. That movies, music, social media, and other forms of entertainment often glorify materialism, violence, efficiency, and instant gratification. When someone begins to immerse themselves in such content, it can shape their thinking and behavior in ways they might not even realize. For example, a person who repeatedly consumes media that normalizes unhealthy relationships or glorifies reckless behavior might start to view these things as acceptable or even desirable. This shift in perspective can lead them down a path that is far from the life they are meant to live. The environments people surround themselves with are another powerful source of influence. A person's surroundings have a significant impact on their mindset and choices. This one spends time in environments that encourage negativity, immorality, or disregard for their well-being. It can be incredibly difficult for them to resist these pressures. Whether it's a workplace filled with gossip and backstabbing, a social circle that encourages destructive habits, or a physical space that feels chaotic and unwelcoming, the impact of these environments is undeniable. Over time, the person might begin to conform to the norms of these spaces, even if they initially felt uncomfortable or out of place. That perhaps one of the most subtle yet damaging influences comes from within a person's own thought patterns. Negative self-talk, unaddressed trauma, and unresolved fears can act as internal saboteurs, steering someone away from their true self. Thus, when these harmful thoughts go unchecked, they create a breeding ground for despair, insecurity, and self-doubt. For example, someone who constantly tells themselves they are not good enough or unworthy of love will begin to act in ways that reinforce these beliefs. They may withdraw from healthy relationships, sabotage opportunities for growth, or engage in behaviors that affirm their negative self-perception. The enemy knows the power of the mind and often targets this vulnerable area to plant seeds of destruction. The cumulative effect of these influences is devastating. Over time, the person may lose touch with their true identity, adopting a version of themselves shaped by external and internal negativity. They might begin to push away the people who genuinely care about them, dismissing their concerns or even becoming hostile toward them. This alienation serves the enemy's purpose perfectly, as isolation makes it easier to maintain control and continue the cycle of harm. The individual may also start to experience a deep sense of dissatisfaction or emptiness as the things they once valued, faith, family, purpose, take a backseat to the chaos that now dominates their life. That recognizing harmful influences in a loved one's life can be challenging, especially when they are not immediately obvious. It often requires careful observation and a willingness to confront difficult truths. Because, for example, you might notice that they've stopped engaging in activities that used to bring them joy, or that they're spending more time with people who seem to bring out the worst in them. Perhaps they started making decisions that seem out of character, prioritizing short-term pleasures over long-term well-being. These changes are not random. They are often the result of the cumulative effect of negative influences that have taken root in their life. Well, if you notice these signs, it's important to approach the situation with care and compassion. The goal is not to confront them with accusations or judgment, as this will likely push them further away. And instead seek to understand what they're going through and offer your support. Ask open-ended questions that encourage them to reflect on their choices and the people or situations they're allowing into their life. And sometimes simply bringing these issues to their attention can be enough to spark a change. Prayer is a powerful tool in combating harmful influences. Pray for the wisdom to identify the specific sources of negativity in their life and for the courage to address them. Ask God to remove these influences and replace them in the positive, life-affirming ones. Prayer also acts as a protective shield, creating a spiritual barrier that can help guard your loved one against further attacks, even if they are not yet ready to acknowledge the role of negative influences in their life. Your prayers can begin to create a path toward healing and restoration. Encouraging someone to seek healthy influences is another practical step. This might involve introducing them to supportive, uplifting people who share their values, or encouraging them to consume content that inspires and motivates rather than drags them down. God, but you can also help them create environments that promote peace and positivity, whether that's by suggesting they reorganize their physical space, find a new job, or spend more time in nature. Thus, small changes can have a significant impact over time, helping them to break free from the grip of harmful influences